Okay, let's get started, everybody. It is 9:03, so hopefully you are ready to roll. Thank you again for coming to Bad Elf's GIS Day 2020. We're going to be discussing a lot of fun stuff today, primarily high accuracy GNSS with ESRI ArcGIS field maps. So if you have been paying attention to the Esri stuff or possibly been maybe part of the IMGIS conference, you'll know that recently, Esri came out with the ArcGIS Field Maps app that you can download on the iOS and Android store. So we're going to be utilizing that app today primarily to show you a ton of best management practices on how to collect high accuracy GNSS or global navigation satellite systems. The lessons and tips and tricks that you're going to hear today absolutely are applicable to no matter what kind of GPS unit you're using. So truly what we're going to be discussing today is agnostic across the board, and hopefully you'll learn a few new things. If you are unfamiliar with Bad Elf, we are over a 10-year-old company primarily dealing with technologies in the GPS world. We started in aviation, in the marine industry, in defense, and have moved into geospatial. So thank you for showing up and checking us out. I also want to just take a minute and say, if you haven't done so already, please follow us on social media platforms. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We have quite a bit of content out on those platforms for you to digest and consume. We often have different raffles and games. We do releases. So it's a good way to keep up to date with where we're going to be, what we're doing, and staying up to date with what's going on with our solution. So please check us out. My name is Nick Smolowski, and I'm going to be your host today. I'm the Director of GIS Solutions here at Bad Elf. I also want to make a quick mention. We have a moderator, Brett Hackelman. He is going to be assisting today with questions. At the end of this session, we will do a live Q&A. So please go ahead, utilize the tool in Zoom. You can submit any questions. Brett will be recording them and moderating at the end. And so we can answer everything that you guys may come up with. I will also just throw this out there that Brett is our Chief Technologies Officer, so we don't always get Brett in this capacity, but figuring it was GIS Day, we wanted to bring the big guns. So if you have any technical questions about the Bad Elf Flex or any of our other systems, Brett will be able to speak to it very, very well. So again, welcome to our webinar for GIS Day 2020. Hopefully we have a little bit of fun. Maybe you learned something. This webinar will be recorded and posted on YouTube. So if you have to leave early or you want to share this with somebody else down the road, please, we'd love it to get out there. At the end of the day, we want everybody collecting the best data possible. That's the end goal here. So why don't we go ahead and get started. On the agenda for today, we are going to be reviewing our equipment. So a couple pieces of equipment we're going to be talking about. We're going to give you a brief introduction of the site that we went out and did some data collection at. We are going to be primarily using Esri ArcGIS field maps. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a new application. So I want to show you some configuration screens to make sure that you are setting up your data collection in the Esri ecosystem appropriately and you're set up for success. We're also, and the meat and potatoes, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, as my parents would say, what this webinar is all about is this best management of field practices. And so that is where we're going to spend the bulk of today's session, educational webinar, on the best management practices of field data collection. We will review the data that was collected in the field. So we will review those data to show you how different scenarios in the field affect GNSS. So remember that GNSS listens to radio signals from satellites. And so when those satellites and those signals have any type of blockage or covering, we see adverse effects. This is across the board, no matter what type of GNSS system you're using. So we want to talk through that because we often get questions about, what can your GPS do in this environment? How does it work in that environment? And so we want to talk through that a little bit. At the very end of the webinar, we will have our Bad Elf Cap contest, and so you will be automatically enrolled in that, and we'll talk about that at the end. So we want to give out a free hat today for everybody, or for somebody out there in the crowd that has made the commitment to spend time with us today. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll do the Q&A. We are all in 45 minutes for this presentation, and with that, I'm actually going to start my clock, so bear with me so I don't waste any of your time. 35 minutes on the presentation and about 10 minutes for the moderated Q&A. Okay, let's get started. So we mentioned that we are going to review some equipment. The first piece of equipment by Bad Elf I want to mention is the GPS Pro Plus. This is a 2-meter accuracy unit. You can see it there on the screen. It's gray. It looks like a hockey puck. A lot of people refer to it as the puck. Or if you're a product of the 90s like I am, my childhood in the 90s, maybe you were familiar with the toy, the Tamagotchi. This is a small device. This device gets about 2 meters of accuracy, okay? So it's designed to be dynamic. You're not gonna see much of this today, but I wanted to throw it out there that we have systems available at extremely low prices that are designed to do different things. And the way I want you to think about GPS or GNSS from here on out is it is a tool in your tool belt. If you're a surveyor, you're gonna have a lot of different tools to go survey that property, right? You're gonna use total stations, you're gonna use rangefinders, you're gonna use GNSS, you may use line levels, you may use pole types, who knows? Same with the GIS person. This is a great product if you are gonna be dynamically moving, you wanna record long track logs. It's a very good entry point. One step up from that would be our GNSS surveyor. This is going to be a 1-meter accuracy unit. This, I kind of proudly throw out there, is one of our most prolific devices in the GIS market. It's a great solution for people in all different types of government, from small and local all the way to the federal, or in large companies where you've got lots of field technicians that you want to have collect high data. This is going to be, again, a 1-meter accuracy unit. And when I say 2-meter or 1 meter, I want you to be thinking that in horizontal accuracy terms, so that if you were at the center point of a circle, and that 1-meter accuracy would be the radius line going out from the center of the circle, going out to the circumference, okay? Last but not least, our new unit that came out here in 2020. I know it's been a tumultuous year for some, but we are very proud of this product. It rolled out at the very beginning of the year, and lots of people across the world and country are now utilizing it. We call it the Bad Elf Flex because it is flexible in accuracy and price. It's flexible in what type of tablet or phone you can use with it, or the application. Today, we're going to be reviewing Esri field maps. I want to make mention that in the presentation today, you are going to see the Flex being used in different modes. And so the Flex comes standard 30 to 60 centimeters of horizontal accuracy right off the shelf. Turn it on, Bluetooth, connect it, you're good to go. But it's important to note that the Flex can also be used with a token for a daily 24-hour time period that will enable it to be in extreme accuracy mode, which gives it access to L-band satellite corrections, a different constellation of satellites up there providing real-time corrections. But almost more importantly, it gives you access to RTK networks or CORS networks, terrestrially based. About 50% or more, maybe 60% of the states in the union have free RTK systems that we can log into. For the demonstration today that you're going to see, we were connected with ADOT's AZ core system. A shout out to Donald and Virgil over at ADOT. Thank you for maintaining that system. So when I say spatial accuracy, what does this mean? I want you to be thinking about this. So in a typical cul-de-sac here in Arizona, you can imagine that the 10-meter radius, or about 30 feet, is that larger reddish line around the outside. You can see concentrically placed, you get 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter, 1 centimeter. It's important to note that cell phone GPS, say like your cell phone, my iPhone 11 here, cell phone GPS won't even be qualified to really any better than about 5 meters. In any application that they utilize. Now, there are things changing, and that may change in the future, but bear in mind that your cell phone GPS is going to get you about 5 meters of accuracy. Now, sometimes you've used your phone and maybe the Uber app or Google or Maps or whatever, all trails, it doesn't matter which app. And sometimes you see that you're way off. It's put you on the other side of the parking lot, the other side of the street. You're 10 meters off, right? And sometimes you see that the actual cell phone GPS will put you on the corner where you're standing on the street. That's the problem with cell phone GPS. It's not accurate enough to really do confident data collection with high fidelity in the field. So we then start to traverse into what we consider consumer grade GPS, which gets into a few meters of range, where then you can move into from consumer to what we consider professional grade, and that's where Bad Elf lives. And then from professional, you actually get to survey grade or engineering grade when you get into that 1 centimeter of accuracy. So when you're thinking about the different assets that you're going to collect in the field, you always need to be cognitively aware of how big these objects are, what type of accuracy you need to have in your GNSS system to collect that asset or that object in the field confidently. What do I mean by this? If you have a water valve that's about this big in the field, and you are trying to use a cell phone that gives 10 meter, say 5 to 10 meters of accuracy, that accuracy rating is not going to be good enough to actively and correctly collect that water valve that's only a few inches in diameter, or say 6 inches in diameter. So you need to be able to understand what kind of accuracy your unit can achieve, how big your asset is in the field, and then make some educated decisions on what type of accuracy you need. The reason engineering or survey grade accuracy in the world of surveyors, you'll often hear 0.2 of a foot vertically. Well, understand that usually GPS, horizontally speaking, are about 1.5 to 2 times better than the vertical accuracy. Okay, so if you want to look at any of the accuracies we're going to discuss today, it's a safe assumption we're about 1.5 to 2 times that vertically. Surveyors say about 0.2 of a foot, right? So what that means is when you start to get that really tight accuracy level to be survey grade, where you're say going to build a building on top of it, or you're going to have road and grade, you're going to actually create bridges and other hardscaped features off of that position, it has to be highly, highly accurate, okay? And that's going to be in that 1 centimeter of accuracy range. So hopefully with the units discussion and this spatial top-down look, you've got a good understanding of what we are going to be talking about today. So what did we do? Well, we're going to collect some data, all right? And so we're going to show you those circumstances in the different environments of how these data were collected and it came out. We went to the Scottsdale Sports Complex. And if you are familiar with Scottsdale or the Scottsdale Sports Complex, or perhaps you're a golf fan, you were watching the Masters the other weekend, the Scottsdale Sports Complex is where the Waste Management Open, the big golf tournament in Scottsdale, where they have the loudest hole in golf. That's the Sports Complex adjacent to that golf course, and that's what we call the Bird's Nest, where you can see some concerts during that event, usually I believe in February. So it's a very famous area. You can see that it in the greater Phoenix area or Maricopa County, what we call the Valley of the Sun here, you can see that it's up off the 101 in the northeast portion of the city, up in Scottsdale, Arizona. Here's a little bit of a zoomed in. You can see there's the TPC Scottsdale Golf Course and the Scottsdale Sports Complex directly in the middle. We are circumnavigated by a few major highways and roads, just to be aware of. Okay, and as we zoom in, this is some aerial imagery provided by Maricopa County, I believe collected by pictometry. You can see here that this is going to be the actual area that we are collecting some data. You've got trees and canopy. We've got buildings. This is a very par of the course, a golf joke. Sorry, guys, that's not even punny at all. We're talking about golf, but par of the course, it's standard, right? It's not any kind of crazy park. It's going to be something you're going to see in most places of the world. There are site conditions to be considered that we'll talk about today with people, pedestrians, animals, also cars, etc. Interestingly enough, and kind of affectionately, we're all a bunch of nerds here, and I think that's probably why you are here for GIS Day. I got my pins on, my Stay Mappy and my Map Guy pin from Esri, but perhaps you've noticed that this park looks similar to something, and maybe you saw the same thing we did, but we kind of call this Yoda's ear park. You can see if you're watching The Mandalorian right now, the youngling or Yoda, his ear actually looks like the park. So a little bit of fun. It's always nice to look at maps and see different things in it, right? And this is what we perceived it to look like. So at different parts, we call it the different locations of his ear. So hopefully you're a Star Wars fan and nerds like us. If not, I apologize. So let's talk about ArcGIS field maps. Before we even get into the app side, which field maps is now available on iOS and Android, you can go download it. It's not any longer in a trial program, so it's open to anybody with Esri accounts. Before you even get there, you need to make sure that your ArcGIS Online, your AGOL map, and feature layers that you're going to be populating with the data collected in the field is properly set up. And so I want to put it out there that we created a special online map called GIS Day 2020 High Accuracy GNSS with Esri ArcGIS Field Maps. Maybe not the most original name, but you know, it's stuck with the name of the webinar. You can see that we have 3 feature classes that we created: the GNSS Surveyor class, the Flex Standard class, and the Flex Extreme RTK class. Notice that I've got WGS84 next to 2 of them and NAT83 next to the other. The GNSS Surveyor and Flex Standard, because it's not receiving active corrections, are going to be in WGS84, and so we prematurely set that up so that we're all collecting in the right buckets, projection-wise. The RTK, and this goes for most RTK networks, excuse me, at least in the United States, that they broadcast in NAT83 2011. And so I just want to make mention that when you start to collect high accuracy data in the field, you need to have your ArcGIS online map set up. You need to have your feature classes appropriately set up. One thing we always recommend to our users is that you set up the GPS metadata, either on ArcGIS Online. There's a checkbox, and there's also a checkbox for z-values. If you're creating your features from Pro or desktop, use the geoprocessing tool to add GPS metadata that will collect more information from the GPS natively that you can always go back to. We'll see that again today. We want to make sure that you are set up correctly for success. The last thing I want to make mention that you have to do, you have to have one layer in your map be editable for the web map to actually show up on your mobile device. So in the settings for those feature layers in ArcGIS Online, in the content section, you need to go in there and make sure that it is an editable layer, or your map will not show up on your Field Maps app. Okay, so moving along, you can see there's our esteemed Brett. We were using his newer iPad, but always, 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 before you start data collection, before you even leave the office, you want to make sure that your settings are good to go. 3 settings in field maps we're going to recommend it. You always check. That's your collection settings, your provider settings, and your profile settings. Under the collection settings, you can see here there are several options that you get. The 2 most important options that we want to make sure you're aware of are, 1, the accuracy setting. That is a accuracy threshold. So that 30 feet you see on the screen right now, what it's saying is it's telling field maps not to collect a point if the accuracy is estimated outside of 30 feet. If you want extremely high accurate data only, you can make that threshold smaller, say to a few feet. Or if you want to make sure that you have rapid collection and nothing slowing down, you can make that threshold very large, and you can basically collect even the worst data. The second thing I want you to understand is what's called GPS averaging. Currently, we have it off. For the demonstration of collection today, it's off, okay? We took 1 second shots, that's 1 epoch, 1 observation. However, when you notice that these points in the spatial location degrade due to canopy cover or buildings or urban canyons, one of the ways you can get around that is with GPS averaging. We do recommend trying this out, maybe a 15-second, 30-second, or even 60-second data collection. What happens is the unit and the app will collect a point every second for the duration you set. It averages those points out. The statistical result of that is normally, 99% of the time, better than a single point. And so that is an option if you've got the time or you need the accuracy that you can choose if your feature is perhaps in not a premier location. Okay, so moving along, under the providers, this is where you're telling field maps to connect to your GPS antenna. So no matter what type of GPS you're using, in this case, we're using Bad Elf. You'll see here that there are three Bad Elf setups. Two of them are Bad Elf Flexes, and one of them is a GNSS surveyor. In the windows, while you set up your location providers, make sure that you've already Bluetoothed your device to your smart device, your phone, tablet. So the GPS needs to be Bluetooth first. Secondly, understand what the height is. You can see I've got a Bad Elf Flex here. Understand if you're on a 2-meter fixed height tripod, you'll need to set the antenna height and the bipod height to get an instrument height. That is all input here under location providers. You need to understand that if you are switching between devices in the field, or perhaps one day you're collecting in one device and the next day you're collecting with a different device, that this needs to be set appropriately or you will not be collecting data the way you want to be. Notice there's also something called integrated. What that is that's the GPS integrated into the cell phone or tablet when you bought it. Basically, we do not recommend using that. That's the whole reason you got into GNSS in the first place, was to have higher accuracy data collection. Last but not least, location profiles. If you are using a GNSS surveyor or any device that's collected natively in WGS 1984, you can leave your location profile set to default. Everything will be taken care of. Just know that Esri underneath the hood is taking care of the reprojections and things. You can leave it as default, you're good to go. However, when you get into higher accuracy collection with real-time kinematic networks that are providing corrections, you do need to set up an additional profile. The profile you need to set up looks like this for most RTK networks, certainly the one we have here in Arizona. You're going to set your GNSS coordinate system, so the coordinate system of the unit, to NAT83 2011. The map coordinate system, or your base layer, will be set to WGS 84. And the datum transformation, you can select the most common one provided by Esri. You can see it's 1984 ITRF08 to NAT83 2011. If you are using RTK, understand you have to have this profile set up. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to jump out into the field. So we're going to do a little techno magic here. We're going to jump into the field. So hopefully everybody's tracking along, and we'll see you here in just a second. Hey everyone, thanks for coming out and visiting with me out here at this beautiful Scottsdale Park for GIS Day 2020. Today we're going to be talking about collecting really good data, understanding how GNSS devices work. In proper conditions, we're going to be looking at some adverse conditions under canopy and different types of buildings and using utilities. So as we walk around today, we're going to be doing a couple things. One, we want to be discussing how to be safe in the field, how to be perceptive about the environment you're in. Two, we want to be making sure that we are collecting the data the best way we can. So we're going to be talking about some best management practices with GPS devices like this. And then three, we are actually going to be collecting data with each of these devices in different modes. And so we're going to be collecting data in 3 different ways. One, with the Bad Elf GNSS surveyor, so a 1-meter GPS unit. We're going to be collecting data with the Bad Elf Flex in standard mode, which is going to be 30 to 60 centimeters, so 1 to 2 feet. And then last, we're going to collect data with the Flex in RTK mode, which is going to be in that 1 centimeter range. When we get back to the office a little bit later, you're going to see those spatial differences, and so you can really solidify in your mind what type of GPS and how to use these types of GPS the best in these types of environments. So this is what we're going to be doing today. It's beautiful out here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am definitely not an actor. I do GIS. I'm a nerd like you. I love GIS. So again, thank you for spending some time with us today on GIS Day 2020. Let's get started talking about a little bit of safety. All right, so let's talk about safety. Obviously, safety is no accident. That's a really bad punny joke. But no, seriously, everybody, safety is very, very important. The first thing I always do, and I've always told the people that I work with out in the field, is number one, when you're in the office, do a little pre-mission planning. Understand your area, understand the land ownership, who owns it. You don't want to be walking into somebody's property or be somewhere you're not supposed to be. So always do a little pre-planning before you get to the field. The second thing is always establish either having a buddy in the field, unless you're in a single person crew, then you would want to make sure that somebody knows that you're out collecting data. I know even with real-time data, with ArcGIS field maps, and that data is displaying on a dashboard, you really want to let somebody know that you're out in the field collecting data. Let them know when you're going into the field and when you're leaving the field. That way you've got somebody checking up on you. So that's the second thing. Third thing, when you get to the site, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is literally do a 360-degree look and just check out your surroundings. Understand your environment. Are you near roads? Are you near airports? Are you near government facilities? Are there people around you? Do you have wildlife considerations? What's the weather like? Understand your situation before you get head first into a tablet collecting data, right? Last thing you'd want to do is be somewhere, you know, and it'd be an adverse condition. I've done surveys near gun ranges, for an example. You wouldn't want to stumble into a gun range unknowingly, right? I know that's a crazy scenario, but again, always understand your environment. Out here in this Scottsdale Sports Complex, and if you're familiar with Scottsdale, this is actually where the Bird's Nest is for the Waste Management Open. It's a fairly safe environment. I don't really have to worry about it. But as we collect some of these assets today, we are going to be moving outside of this open space area and towards roads, in which we really want to be paying attention. Every year, surveyors, GIS mappers in the field, they die from collisions from cars, and it's really sad. So something we want to be very cognizant of. The other thing I mentioned, temperature. So it's November, it's beautiful out right now. It's not something we necessarily have to worry about. But if you've been in Arizona in the summer, or you're from up north and you've got winter conditions, always understand what the temperature is going to be like. You want to pack water. I often recommend having a Camelback or some type of water with you. Also a hat. I have a wide brim hat for later on when the sun gets at the top, the pinnacle in the sky, so I don't want to, get sunburnt. I've got a survey shirt that I can unravel so my skin's not going to be burned up today. So these are really important things to be considering. So water, environmental conditions, weather, your site, what you're going to be doing, letting your buddy know. Last but not least, right now we're stationary, but if you're out collecting data and perhaps you see this retaining wall behind me, perhaps you're walking that retaining wall and collecting a polyline, right? Be careful where you're walking. We often want to stick our face in our phone or tablet and we're not paying attention. There's a reason that they literally have signs now at like state national parks that say, put your cell phone down when you're walking around. Last thing you want to do is step into a pothole, trip. It'll end your day really quickly if you twist your ankle. So what I always suggest is making sure when you're walking that you're not face down. You always want to be looking around, making sure that you're paying attention to your surrounding, not just what's happening on the screen. So that's pretty much what we want to talk about in terms of safety. Again, a lot of companies, I will say, they do safety checklists. So if this is something that you need to kind of have discipline to do, write up a checklist and simply check off that checklist before you get started. Okay, so that's going to be our safety talk. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of data collection we're going to be doing. Okay, so we've reviewed a little bit about safety. We did an introduction why we're here. Let's talk a little bit more about the site, what we're going to be doing today in terms of data collection, and what we're going to be collecting those data with. So these two GPS units here. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what we're doing. So number one, a few best management practices, and this goes for any GNSS out there, not just Bad Elf. You could be using any type of GNSS. I want to make this very, very clear that this is educational for anybody out there. We don't care what type of GPS you're using. We really just want you to be collecting really high accurate data to the best of your ability. So this is tips and tricks you can use across the board, okay? So number one, we want to talk about how GPS work, right? So it's listening to radio signals from satellites. So the first thing we want to consider is, are we obstructing the view of these GPS from listening to those radio signals? The reason we have it on a fixed 2-meter tripod, this flex unit up here, is there's no way, what we call a meat shield, AKA me, there's no way I can block it, right? Today, we're gonna go around, we're gonna show you the difference on how these units work underneath tree canopy and next to buildings and open space, this premier condition. We're gonna show you how those things differ. And what you're gonna see is the more obstruction on this unit, the worse, okay? One of the things, and we've got our GNSS surveyor over here, and you may be very familiar. This is pretty much our most popular GIS device. If you've been in an Esri users conference or one of the major conferences, you're gonna have seen this unit before. This is our 1-meter unit, really affordable to mass distribute for your organization. But one of the reasons we've got this unit here, we've got it on a monopod. So a lot of people in the field currently today will put this on a lanyard and it will hang from their neck, which is not a problem. But what's gonna happen is if you were to take the collection with the unit kind of as a necklace, your body is gonna be cutting off half of the sky. So half of the ability for you to listen to satellites, you're now obstructing that view. So what we would recommend is put it on a monopod like this, or actually extend it out from away from your body so your body's not obstructing it. And additionally, what that's gonna do is not only unobstruct it, it's actually gonna create the orientation that you need with this device. So the first option, or the first thing to consider, obstruction. You wanna make sure that these devices have the least amount of obstruction possible. Second thing is orientation. If you've got the unit out, holding it in your palm, on top of a monopod, what you've got here is the perfect orientation for this unit. This screen right here needs to be facing up for the best accuracy possible, because literally there's a little disc antenna in there that wants to be facing up. Now, the Bad Elf Flex is a little bit different. You're gonna notice there's a difference in form factor, but in the same fashion, if you're set up on a pole like this, you want the top of the Flex to be facing up, sort of like a missile going into the sky. This is the best orientation for the Flex. So that's the second best management practice you want to consider. The third thing is called letting the GPS settle. So both of these GPS are running right now, and they are just chilling, right? They're settling. And what we mean by that is, when you're out collecting data and you're walking around, the reality is most GPS actually don't like to move. They like to be stationary and static, right? So when you get to your object that you want to collect, perhaps it's the survey point that we're set up on, we always recommend walk to the point, take a deep breath, wait a few seconds, let the GPS rest, and you'll literally watch on the metadata screens, because Bad Elf, we have screens on our units, you can see that accuracy as it rests will actually get way better. So you're gonna see, that delta go way down, and that's called letting it rest, right? So again, GPS can work while you're walking, but if you want really high accuracy for a single object, whether it's a survey point or utility or a pole like we're gonna do today, you really wanna let it rest. So 3 things you wanna consider: 1, orientation; 2, meat shield; and 3, letting the GPS rest. So those are a couple things we're going to be considering today. Again, we're going to be going to all these different types of things to collect these assets, or I guess they're park furniture in some ways, things that are in this park. And we're going to show you how these best management practices affect what you're doing in these different conditions. So what we're going to do here in just a second is we're actually going to start collecting some data with ArcGIS field maps. All right, so let's talk a little bit about collecting data with these GPS and with Esri ArcGIS Field Maps app. Okay, so this new app has just recently been released by Esri. Again, it's called Field Maps. It takes a bunch of their disparate apps like Collector and Workforce and Tracker, and it puts them all together in this new application. Just came out. You can download it from the iOS store or the Android store. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure everything is connected. So before the video started, I made sure that the GPS was on, and so today we're going to be starting with the Flex. So it's Bluetooth connected. So the first thing I can do here is I'm going to pull up the Bad Elf Flex app and make sure that it connects, and it is. We are operating in standard mode right now to collect our first point. This is going to be our open space, or our premier point, to show the best opportunity for the GPS, okay? And you can see here in standard mode, I'm collecting at about 5.7 inches of accuracy. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dual screen, and I'm going to pull up the Field Maps app, okay? And so you can now see that I've got 2 applications up. I'm going to go ahead and just show you that I've already made a app that we're going to be using today to collect data in, and it's called GIS Day 2020. Also know very quickly that under the profile that we are considering the provider, the profile, and the collection settings, all of which are very important depending on what type of GPS you're using and what kind of accuracy you want. So I just want to bring that up, that you can see there that we are properly connected. And we're going to pull up the GIS map, and you can see there the map on the left-hand side and the flex screen on the right. I'm going to actually pull up the satellite screen for the flex so you can see metadata-wise we are tracking a ton of satellites. So why don't we go ahead and collect our point. We're going to hit the blue plus button. And as I mentioned, we are collecting with the Bad Elf Flex in standard mode. So that's going to be natively collected in WGS 1984. Okay, and so I'm going to add the point. The point has been collected. We're using only a 1 second, 1 observation, or 1 epoch of collection, and that's all they wrote. All right, so we are walking over to our second feature that we're going to be collecting today during this Scottsdale Park inventory. This is going to be a traditional GIS workflow, not necessarily a survey grade workflow. I've got the GNSS surveyor unit here. And as we talked about earlier, we want to make sure we're using all those best management practices. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place the surveyor unit here, that GNSS surveyor, right next to the feature that we're going to collect. I'm going to make sure that the screen is facing up so the orientation is correct. And I'm actually going to take a few steps back from the object so I'm not obstructing it, okay? And all of the time while that's sitting there, what's happening is that GPS is actually settling. And so the accuracy is getting better. And on the screen here in field maps, you can literally see we just went from about 3 feet of accuracy to about 2.9 feet of accuracy. And now we're at 2.8 feet of accuracy. And so the longer you see us sitting here, you're actually going to get a little bit of a better GPS recording. So the other thing about stepping back from the surveyor unit, what's nice is if you wanted to take a picture. So I'm going to go ahead and record the point here in field maps. And I'm going to click GNSS surveyor, but this time I can actually take a photo as well of the asset, because a photo is 1,000 words. I can use the photo and I can click submit, and now I have effectively collected a point with a 1 meter accuracy unit. Now, last thing I want to mention here, why this is a perfect GIS workflow. Why? Because big assets like this are wonderful for that level of accuracy. If you're doing utility poles or signage or trash cans or basketball hoops, you name it. If it is a big object like this, that surveyor unit's going to do great for you. Okay, so right now we're going to go ahead and start collecting the other points so we can show it to you back in the office. And again, this is our GIS workflow for a utility. All right, everybody, we've made it to our next point. So this is point 3 for the day. You can see that our conditions have changed a bit. So hopefully you can hear me over the traffic behind me. Luckily, we're not actually out into the road. Again, remember, always paying attention to your environment. Don't accidentally want to step into the road. That would not be good. In this example, we're going to do another showing of how GIS collection can be done. This time we're using the Flex in standard mode. So this is a 1 to 2 foot sub-meter accuracy solution at the moment. The reason we picked this unit with this accuracy to collect this utility here, this water box, is because the distance the water box is from the utility next to it. So actually what we're going to do is collect 2 points here so you can see the relationship of these 2 utilities on a map when they are this close. Just think about what is the distance to that object. If that distance to that object is greater than the threshold of the accuracy the unit can provide, you may need to consider getting a better unit. So again, this is a perfect option. You can see here on the screen that we're actually collecting or averaging 5.2 inches. And so this point actually is within the circumference of the object. So we know this is going to work out real well with all of our accuracy tolerances. So I'm going to go ahead and collect the point, making sure that I'm collecting the right one, Flex Standard, WGS 84. And I'm going to quickly just pick this bipod up, making sure I'm not stepping into the road. going to make sure that the orientation is good and I'm level, so using the bubble level here. Again, staying out of the road. I'm going to go ahead and collect the second point. And on the map here, if I zoom in, you can actually see that there is a distance between these points. They're catty corner, which is actually representative of what's going on in the real world. Again, this is a perfect example of a sub-meter unit collecting collecting utility assets with the correct amount of accuracy. All right, everybody, here we go. We are at our next location to do a little bit more feature collection. You can see this time we are literally in the middle of the canopy of this mesquite tree in Scottsdale Park. What we've got up on the screen, I've got Esri field maps on the left-hand side. I've got the Bad Elf Flex on the right-hand side. So this time, because of the condition we're in, you can also see we're closer to a road. Because of the condition we're in with the obstructed view, we're going to show a RTK, a real-time kinematic workflow. So I just want to make mention that we're using a Flex. I've engaged an extreme accuracy token, so I'm using a daily rate token to get multi-frequency, multi-constellation, and access to L-band and RTK correction sources. Okay, so this is an example of a not so good a situation. And what you can see here is it's actually saying we're at about 0.4, 0.5 inches. So when we connected to the RTK network around here, provided by Arizona Department of Transportation, normally, in perfect conditions, we see about 1 centimeter of horizontal accuracy. Right now, we are a little bit higher than that, but that is exactly to be expected because we are underneath a tree. So I want to make mention that when you are underneath canopies, all GPS, no matter the brand, no matter the color, no matter the type, the size, then doesn't matter. It's always going to have degradation of the signal. So let's go ahead and collect the point. Now, keeping in mind as well, and actually I'm going to take a quick step back and I'm going to show you that I've set the settings up here for the provider and profile to be specific for the Flex and RTK mode, and you can see that on the screen there. One thing to keep in mind, that if you're using RTK corrected sources, you need to set up field maps appropriately, okay? So now I can click the button, I can come down here to the Extreme RTK Flex, and I can submit the point. Okay, so that's an example of an RTK workflow. Okay, everybody, we are at our last stop for today's GIS Day 2020 field exercises, some best management practices, and you can see we are literally up against a wall here, between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. This is the worst condition that we could really show you. It's what we call an urban canyon. This impervious rock surface right here absolutely loves to eat radio signals from satellites, which is going to cause major interference with either the Flex or even the Bad Elf GNSS surveyor, right? So you can see that, you're going to have to collect stuff like utilities next to buildings. We just want everybody to be very, very aware that GNSS absolutely will be influenced in a negative fashion when you're next to a big surface like this. I've also went ahead, we are running the Flex right now in RTK mode, and so we are connected to that A dot. And right now you can see we are about 5.5 inches of accuracy. So in the middle, with perfect sky availability, satellite availability, we were in that 1 centimeter range. So, a fraction of an inch. Now we're at about 5 inches. So you can see that there is a difference when you go against this wall. So I'm going to go ahead and collect the point so we can review these later. Additionally, you would see that same sort of relationship with the surveyor unit. So if it was a 1 meter accuracy, I can go over here and actually take a peek at it. All right, so we're wrapping up our day of collection. Thanks again for joining us. Hopefully you've learned something. But before we leave the site, I just want to end with another safety note. A couple things. Always make sure you got all your equipment. Maybe you've left things around. Always leave your site cleaner than you get it, right? So make sure you got your equipment. If you have nails, flagging, you name it, make sure you grab all of that. Secondly, if you're out here with a buddy, make sure your buddy is with you and safe, right? And if you need to, if you had to get granted access to the site, always tell the people that you're leaving the site so they are confident and they know that you're not on site anymore, okay? So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go back to the office and we're gonna check out all these data that we collected. We're gonna take a look in the map, and so we can correlate how each of these units at the different level of their accuracies compare on a map. And so you can see the utilities we collected, the tree, the wall, the perfect point, and you'll be able to see how all of that correlates in the map. So we'll see you right back at the office, okay? Thanks. All right, woo, that was a fun field trip there. We're back in the office. Hopefully you could hear that okay over the sound of the cars and the video. I do want to make mention that we are at about time right now, so I'm going to expedite the data review. And then if you're willing to stick around, we will do the Q&A. So here are the points that we collected out at the Yoda's ear. And you can see the different points collected. There were 3 types. You'll see 3 different symbologies for each of the type of collection. We can zoom in to the actual ear. You can see that the first point in the middle, this point here, was the open sky. So this was the best condition to do data collection. Next, we went to the light post in the lower left-hand corner, followed by the utility boxes in the top right-hand corner, and then last but not least, we're under the canopy. So what I want to do is let's take a quick peek at open space, perfect conditions, how the recording went, and then let's look at the canopy and relate the two together underneath the tree. So zoomed in, what you can see here is the green triangle on your screen is the RTK flex. That RTK flex was collecting at a fraction of an inch. So we can fairly confidently say that the green triangle is pretty dang close, right, to the actual real location of the object in the field. Well, we were on a survey nail, right? And what you can see is we've measured to the GNSS surveyor, which is measuring 0.78 meters away. So about 3 or 2/3 of a meter. And so that unit being 1 meter of accuracy is, in theory, in the threshold of where it should be. It's collecting data exactly the way it should be doing. The blue dot you see there is actually the flex in standard mode. So that is a sub-meter unit, 1 to 2 feet. And again, making the estimate, you can, from the green triangle to the blue dot, you are in that accuracy threshold. However, this time we're now looking at the tree and under the canopy, you can see that the green triangle is going to be the RTK, and the GNSS surveyor now being measured is more than about 5 meters away. And so the GNSS surveyor that was not in RTK mode, it was not receiving corrections, you could see that it got about 5 times worse, right? So the canopy had an adverse effect on it. Now, we mentioned you could do GPS averaging in field maps. You could also, if you choose to, move the point manually based on the base map. However, I want to make a special note that you never, or you really want to consider the base map, so the imagery behind your points, as not high fidelity data, non-authoritative data. And we don't really recommend moving points to the image. And quite often you'll see that those image points, the image and the points will be off. So here is an example of the RTK did okay underneath the tree, but the surveyor unit in WGS 84 as 1 meter did not do as well. So then we did the building, right? So this building was, I don't know, about 15 feet tall in brick. And interestingly enough, when looking at it, the green triangle was the best recording. The worst recording was the surveyor. The next best recording was the flex in standard mode. You'll notice that actually the error propagated in 2 different directions. So it propagated down to the southwest, but also up to the northeast. And so something to consider is that error can be all around, and that's something we kind of relate to as what we call precision. Now, I was going to do a live demo. I've got ArcGIS online. We can look at the data. However, we are running long. So what I wanted to say is everybody that was part of this webinar, I can't believe how many people came today. Lots of GIS nerds out there, lots of friendly faces and people we know and a lot of people we don't. So if you were a part of this today, you have been automatically enrolled for the Bad Elf Hat Contest. If you win, we'll let you know, and we'll ask you for what kind of size hat you would like. That's just our gratitude to you for coming alongside of us today for this fun webinar. And last but not least, we are going to do a Q&A. So if you need to get going, we appreciate it. This would be a time you can absolutely leave. We really appreciate you swinging by today. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at sales@bad-elf.com, or you can email me directly at nick@bad-elf.com. So if you need to get going, no problem. We're going to go ahead and cancel the recording now and then complete the Q&A session like normal. And so again, thank you everybody. Enjoy your GIS Day 2020. Hopefully I'll see you in some other webinars from other places this afternoon. I know I'm signed up for a bunch of fun activities. And again, we really appreciate it. So this is going to officially end the webinar, and we'll move into the Q&A.